In this video, we want to learn about product to sum formulas. Here you can see a list of product to sum formulas. Sine of alpha cosine beta is 1/2 sine of sum of the angles plus sine of difference of the angles. And here, attention, this is really important. You have to subtract beta from alpha. Alpha minus beta here we have. So, please attention, this is a common mistake here. When you want to write this sign, you have to subtract the angle that belongs to the cosine from the angle that belongs to sine. You should not change the order, otherwise your answer would be wrong. Let me show you here how, by using this formula, we can write this in the form of sum of two trigonometric function. With the aim of this formula, we can write this in the form of 1/2 sine of sum of the angles. 5x plus 3x is 8x plus sine of 5x minus 3x, which is 2x. So this is the answer for this question. Sine of 5x cosine of 3x is equal to 1/2 sine of 8x plus sine of 2x. If you wonder when we need these formulas, first of all, this type of conversion from product to sum can sometimes help you to simplify expression. But one of the applications of these formulas is in finding integrals of trigonometric functions. You will learn about integrals in the calculus course. In calculus, you will see that for finding integrals of products like this, like sine of 5x times y cosine of 3x, the only way that we can find these integrals is using these formulas. And of course, there are other applications for these formulas. Look at the next example. Cosine of 2x, cosine of 3x. Here, both of these functions are cosine. So, of course, we have to use this formula. Based on this formula, this equals 1/2 cosine of sum of the angles, cosine of the difference of the angles. So, cosine of 2x minus 3x, cosine of alpha minus beta. Alpha minus beta would be negative x. So this is the answer. But let me tell you something here. Cosine is even function. When a function is even, it means that for that function, negative of x is not important for that function, which means that cosine of negative x is the same as cosine of x. When a function is even, it has this property. When we have negative x is the same as x. Cosine of negative x is the same as cosine of x. So here you can write, instead of cosine of negative x, cosine of x. So we can write our answer in this simpler form here. You can write your answer in the form of 1/2 cosine of 5x plus cosine of x. And this is because of cosine is even function. But attention, sine is not even function. If for sine we have a negative, you cannot ignore this negative. Sine of negative x is negative sine of x. And this is because of sine is odd function. Let me show you this difference by an example. Look at this example here that we did together. Sine of 5x cosine of 3x is 1/2 sine of 8x plus sine of 2x. Now suppose instead of this question, we have sine of 3x cosine of 5x. So sine of 3x cosine of 5x. Let's write this in the form of sum. This equals 1/2 sine of sum of the angles 8x plus sine of the difference of the angles, and you have to subtract alpha minus beta. Basically you have to subtract beta from alpha. 3x minus 5x would be negative 2x, so sine of negative 2x. So this is our answer. If you want to simplify this answer, you cannot ignore this negative. But what you can do with this negative, you can bring it out, and you can put this negative here basically. So here the answer can be written in the form of 1/2 sine of 8x minus sine of 2x. Now you can see the difference. When we have negative here for cosine, ignore it. It's not important. But when it's sine, because sine is odd, you cannot ignore this negative. You have to bring it and put the negative here. So we have a negative here. Now you can see the difference between sine and cosine in these formulas. If you have a negative for cosine, ignore it. But if it is sine, bring the negative out of the bracket and put it outside. Let me show you more examples. Here we have sine of theta over 2 cosine of 3 theta over 2. Based on the formula, this equals 1/2 sine of sum of the angles theta over 2 plus 3 theta over 2 is 4 theta over 2, which is 2 theta. So sine of 2 theta plus sine of the difference of the angles theta over 2 minus 3 theta over 2. This is negative 2 theta over 2, which is negative theta. So sine of negative theta. Again, as you can see, we have a negative. What we have to do with that negative? Because sine is odd, you know what you have to do. Simply, you can erase this negative from here and you can put the negative outside. And this is the final answer for this question. 1/2 sine of 2 theta minus sine of theta. And you don't need the bracket here because it's just theta. So the final answer is 1/2 sine of 2 theta minus sine of theta. Look at the next example. Sine of 15 degrees times cosine of 75 degrees. You can find the value of sine of 15 degrees and cosine of 75 degrees with a calculator, and then you can multiply these values. But without calculator, we want to find the value of this expression. Let's see what happens if we use the product to sum formula for simplifying this. Hopefully it helps us to find the value. 1/2 sine of sum of the angles 15 plus 75 is 90 degrees plus sine of alpha minus beta, and attention, this is alpha and this is your beta. Alpha minus beta would be 15 minus 75. 15 minus 75 is negative 60 degrees. This equals 1/2. Sine of 90 degrees is 1. For sine of negative 60, you know that negative we can move the negative out, so we erase the negative here and we put the negative outside. But what is sine of 60 degrees? What is the value of sine of 60? If you remember from a special triangle, let me draw a special triangle here. Let's suppose here is 30 degrees, here is 60 degrees, 1 root 3, 2. Sine of 60 is opposite over hypotenuse, radical 3 over 2. So sine of 60 degrees is radical 3 over 2, but we have a negative outside, so minus radical 3 over 2. And this is the answer for this question. If you want, you can multiply the 1/2 in the bracket, or you can leave it outside. It's up to you. Look at the next example. 6 cosine of 22.5 degrees times cosine of 67.5 degrees. We don't know the value of cosine of 22.5 and cosine of 67.5 normally without a calculator. So it can be a good idea to write this in the form of sums. Hopefully it helps us to simplify. What we have to do with 6. 6 is a coefficient. 6 is a number. Don't worry for 6. Leave it outside. So here we write 6 here and we start using the formula product to sum for cosine times cosine. Let me remind you. Cosine of alpha times cosine of beta is 1/2 cosine of sum of the angles plus cosine of the difference of the angles. So based on the formula, cosine of alpha, this is your alpha and this is your beta. This equals 6 times, don't forget you have a 1/2 in the formula, so 6 times 1/2 times by cosine of sum of the angles. 22.5 plus 67.5 is 90 degrees plus cosine of the difference of the angles. 22.5 minus 67.5 is negative 45. So we have to write cosine of negative 45. But cosine is even, so cosine of negative 45 is the same as cosine of 45. So this is like cosine of 45 degrees because cosine is even function. Now we have to find the value of cosine of 90 and cosine of 45. Cosine of 90 degrees is 0. Remember the unit circle? 90 is here. And cosine of 90 degrees is 0 because 90 is, cosine is x value, and at this point the x coordinate of this point is 0. Cosine of 90 degrees is 0. And also you can find this by drawing graph of cosine. Graph of cosine is something like this, and this point is 90 degrees. As you can see, cosine of 90 is 0. But what about cosine of 45? Cosine of 45 is 1 over radical 2 based on the special triangles that we have to memorize. So finally, what is the answer of this? We have a 6 here times by 1/2, which is 3. 3 times by cosine of 45. Cosine of 45 is 1 over radical 2, which is basically radical 2 over 2. If we rationalize this, this is like radical 2 over 2. So the final answer is 3 times by radical 2 over 2. So the final answer is 3 radical 2 over 2. All of this is 3. This is radical 2 over 2. Multiply these two, and this is the answer. Look at the next example. 2 cosine of 37.5 degrees cosine of 7.5 degrees. Again, it should be clear that we want to use the product to sum formula. If we use the formula, then we have this equals to 2. This 2 is here. Then don't forget your formula has a 1/2. Then cosine of sum of the angles. 37.5 plus 7.5 is 45 degrees. Then cosine of the difference of the angles. 37.5 minus 7.5 is 30 degrees. Now we have to simplify this answer. 2 times 1/2 is 1. So this goes with this. All of this is 1. So only focus on the inside of the bracket. Cosine of 45 is radical 2 over 2 or 1 over radical 2. radical 2 over 2 is better way for writing cosine of 45. So let's write it radical 2 over 2. And cosine of 30 degrees is radical 3 over 2 because of the special triangle. If we suppose here as 30 degree, then here is 1, here is radical 3, 2, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, radical 3 over 2. So the final answer is radical 2 plus radical 3 all over 2. You can write your answer in this form as well. Radical 2 plus radical 3 all over 2. I hope by watching this video now you are familiar with product to sum formulas for trigonometric functions. If you like this video, please subscribe in my channel and see you in the next videos.